am happy to have been invited to the inauguration of the 89th Foundation course at the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration here in Mussoorie. My mind goes back to the day in June 1961 when I entered this campus diffidently with a multitude of thoughts, an admixture of anxiety and expectations, fear and fancies racing through the mind. Today, therefore, is homecoming for me and an opportunity to thank the Academy for the rites of initiation and for the opportunity to acquire friends and sustain many of these friendships for over half a century. I salute the colleagues of that era who are no longer with us. Their memory lingers. The joy of visiting the Academy is enhanced by this opportunity to interact with young persons who are about to embark on their own careers in civil services. They do so in exciting times when the world is changing, India is changing, and the tasks and challenges are changing. They will have a role to play in shaping a future that is itself in flux. The honor is bestowed on the select few only. You, however, cannot rest on your laurels. Your journey has just begun, and it's a long one. Only your own hard work, integrity, commitment to selfless service, and an unending pursuit of excellence will stand you in good stead in this pursuit. Do remain steadfastly committed to these values. Success and recognition will seek you rather than the other way around. It is widely recognized that no profession offers the kind of opportunity and authority for participating in nation building and societal transformation as does a career in civil services. With this authority comes a huge responsibility. You must remain cognizant that in a vibrant democracy such as ours, governments exist by popular will only to serve to the people and uphold the national interest in the widest sense of the term. Government is a steward of public good. It articulates priorities based on the needs of the people, translates them into policies, and implements programs based on those policies so that lives of people improve continuously. These priorities, policies, and programs change with the changing aspirations and requirements of the people, to which the government and the civil services has to adjust accordingly. In this overarching philosophy of governance and public administration, the civil service becomes the principal vehicle for delivery of public goods and services to the people. A politically neutral but committed to public service bureaucracy is thus a sine qua non for the smooth functioning of a democratic government such as ours. Additionally, and in our own times, the bureaucracy has another important role, that of a bridge between the people and their elected representatives. The civil servant is expected to faithfully implement the directions of the duly elected government. At the same time, he or she must ensure that nothing which the political executive does transgresses the fundamental law of our republic. Allow me to dwell on some harsh truths, ladies and gentlemen. While much has been achieved by us as a people in the decades of independence, the fruits of development have reached the public unevenly. We still have starvation deaths, which exist with high levels of malnutrition and undernourishment. Widespread poverty and unemployment are a reality. So is the lack of basic civic amenities such as health care, education, water supply, sanitation, transport and communication. Acute social and gender inequality and related discrimination are pervasive in our society. India ranks 135th out of 187 countries of the UNDP's Human Development Index. India has the dubious distinction of being home to the largest number of the poor in the world, with around 1/3 of our population below the poverty line. This is compounded by existence of the social discrimination and inequality based on caste, religion, or region. Each of these derogates from the ideals of justice, equality, and fraternity. This does not mean that successive governments and generations of civil servants in independent India have not tried to address the maladies that affect our economy and society. Large investments have been made in social and physical infrastructure. Programs aimed at poverty alleviation, employment generation, literacy, food security, health care and shelter have been launched. Subsidies for food, energy and agricultural inputs have been provided at a heavy cost to the exchequer. Nevertheless, the outcomes of these programs could have been better. Besides the magnitude and complexity of our developmental challenges, poor program implementation or leakages in the public service delivery have been diagnosed as reasons for our underachievement in the development agenda. The figures of leakage and wastage of resources are astronomical. If these are plugged and resources utilized more efficiently, realization of our development goals could be hastened substantially. As functionaries of the state, you must always remember that the emancipation of the deprived and the marginalized sections of our society is a special responsibility. Unless they are uplifted, we can never emerge as a strong and prosperous nation. All this has gone hand in hand with demands and expectations that have undergone significant change. We now have an aspirational India, impatient to taste in greater measure the fruits of economic prosperity and social progress, and as a matter of right. Our citizens today seek governance which is efficient, transparent, honest, and responsive. There is a sense of urgency in the demand and lesser inclination for patience and forgiveness. Your capacity to perform will therefore depend largely on your ability to evoke public confidence. Critical to maintaining public trust is through upholding the highest standards of integrity that has to be built up and maintained painstakingly over many, many years. In recent times, public cynicism towards government and its functionaries has multiplied. Each one of us in public life has a responsibility to address this scourge by setting impeccable standards of integrity and exemplary behavior. Policy, ultimately, is implementation. It is what happens that counts. If policies are not translated into specific programs, which are in turn not well implemented, failure is logical. Hence, our officer trainees should focus, including as part of your training, on ways and means to improve the public services delivery mechanisms so that benefits of our public policies and programs reach the intended beneficiaries in an efficient and effective manner. A dynamic civil service ready to adapt to the changing needs of the aspirations of our people is thus an imperative necessity. You, as civil servants, ladies and gentlemen, become the primary instrument for discharging this solemn duty. This enjoins you to a set of do's and don'ts. Do not become hostage to special interest groups. Do not give in to extraneous pressures in the discharge of your duties. Do not seek patrons. Do not deviate from the letter and spirit of the Constitution of India and the principles of rule of law. Retain at all times a national perspective and the overall public interest. Gandhiji had said that the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. You must therefore reach out to the masses in order to see things from the perspective of those whom you serve, those who are on the receiving end when you make and implement policies. This approach will make you better officers, but more importantly, even better human beings. Friends, our country is emerging as an important player on the world stage. Our political and economic weight in a globalized world is increasing. At the same time, newer challenges are emerging in which political and geographical boundaries provide no protection against competition emanating from beyond our borders. You, as members of the higher civil service, would have to continuously enhance your skills and upgrade your knowledge in order to remain globally competitive. You must strive for training and specialization as well as use of modern technology in your work. But you must remain sensitive to the welfare of ordinary Indians. I wish you success and satisfaction. I thank the Director of the Academy for inviting me today. Jai Hind. Unusual day in my normal routine. In the morning, I spend some time with those whose responsibility it is to safeguard the nation from external threats. And this afternoon, I have come here to interact with you and learn more about the other threats that are equally lethal. Now, all this to happen in one day is happily a very educative exercise. Let me say one thing more about the city of Dehradun. That for these two institutions to be located on one street is absolutely remarkable. And I don't think there is any other set of institutions anywhere in the country where two such vital institutions to national security, one in a conventional sense and the other in a non-conventional, more modernistic sense, are there. So I'm happy to be here, and now please go ahead with your question.
Sir, you have been a successful civil servant, an academician, and now the Vice President of the Union of India. What, according to you, sir, is the mantra for success in public service?
I think the mantra in success in any branch of civil service is really to be found in the motto, individual mottos of different services, and they all ultimately focus on the same thing. Do your duty to the best of your ability. Give the best that you can master to the challenges that confront you in the discharge of your duty. Do your work fearlessly. Do not fall prey to extraneous pressures. And at the end of the day, have the inner satisfaction that you have done the best you could. And then the recognition will seek you. You don't have to seek recognition for your work. I think that's the only mantra that I think I can put together. I confess I have not thought about it earlier. Thank you.
According to you, the government services, the delivery system can be improved.
Quantum of public service or government service that can be delivered. I think we need to be clear about it. There are certain things that government can do, and there are certain things that the government cannot do. So asking the government to do something which is way beyond its charter of duties and its capabilities is unrealistic. Now, having established those parameters, then you see how can things be improved in the realm of what is to be done. Today we are much more aware, thanks to the awareness about climate change and related matters. Today we are much more aware of the damage that we have done and are continuing to do to planet Earth. And we can certainly destroy the planet. We don't have the capacity to recreate it, but we certainly have the capacity to destroy it. So my short answer to your question is that, the services have to be improved keeping the longer term objective in mind. You cannot say it must be done today, so it must be done today. Think about what will happen tomorrow, day after, and all that. But I'm afraid the answer is with you when you are in the field. You will have to make that judgment, and that is what this academy is all about, and all the training that you undergo, because you will be making an informed judgment whether cutting a tree in a particular situation is right or not right.
So only the few services which are accountable. Still so many things are neglected and unaccountable. But at present the demands for the people and the society is entirely different, as you said. But how can we sensitize the society and appreciate these resources and these services?
I think we need environmental education at the level of schools. Just like we need basic moral education at the level of schools. We need human rights education at the level of schools. Similarly, in regard to environment. It is when the child grows up into a young person, then he or she must be sufficiently aware of what the implication may be. So awareness is very important. Now, as far as accountability is concerned, I think we as a people are witnessing a transition. We are much more aware of shortcomings today than we were 10 years back, 15 years back. And therefore, if we are aware, we can pinpoint the shortcomings. And whether the shortcomings are in the Indian Administrative Service or Indian Railway Service or Indian any other Indian service, the same diligence will have to be undertaken to give answers. And that is how accountability will come.
According to you, what will be the role of a forest service and a forester in urban India?
I presume India is getting urbanized. Is the awareness of forests and the problems of forests has to move beyond local communities, village communities, forest communities, to those who venture into forests. I would say the duty really lies in making the urban dweller conscious of the requirements of the forest service. It can be done in diverse ways. It doesn't have to be a structured capsule. You can do it through occasional TV programs, you can do it through talk shows, you can do it in various other ways. But the awareness has to be universal. It cannot be confined only to a small group of people living on the peripheries of forests.
The conflict between the development and the conservation agenda in current scenario.
Each society has to develop that balance. We have to develop, there are no two views about it. But there could be more than one way of developing. I think it is more a matter of convenience, shortcuts, which the developer would wish to take. But it is the duty of society and the government acting on behalf of the society to ensure that that balance is not upset. Ensure that the norms are not violated. And if correctives have to be done and if solutions have to be found keeping a balance between the two sides, then it should be the result of a conscious, deliberate exercise in which all stakeholders are participants. It cannot be the view of the industrialist only. It cannot be the view of the forest conservator only. You have to make a balance, strike a balance, and then you will be able to move forward with greater surety.
Why doesn't the government invest in the forestry and environment sector? If we see the changing climatic scenarios and the recent Uttarakhand disaster, which had caused loss to the government of around 55,000 crores, and we don't go for plantation activities on the hills, which may cost very less. So I think on economic basis also it is desirable for the government to invest, but it doesn't do in that way. So I would just ask your views on that.
Who is the government? You, I, and everybody else. You see, government is a collective, and because it is a collective, its decisions are taken in a balance of pulls and pressures. In theory, your question is absolutely valid. The government should invest. You referred to the Uttarakhand disaster last year. I was discussing this yesterday with one of the senior public figures here. And I said, why can we not organize the yatra the way it is done for Amarnath or Vishnu Devi? And I was told, but it was thought about, that there is an old act of the government that there should be an organizing committee of the more or less of the type that exists in for Vishnu Devi and all that. So my question was, then what happened? Is that local pressures prevented us from doing it? So I think when all the results of all the investigations relating to last year's horrendous disaster are collated, we will probably find that it is as much a human error as a cloudburst. Why did we build? There is an old Englishman who decided to stay back in India by the name of Ruskin Bond. I recall seeing him on a television program last year at the time of the disaster. And he gave a very intelligent answer. He said in the earlier times, cities were built on top of hills. So no matter how much it rained, the water drained off. Today you are building in riverbeds. And since you cannot control the quantum of water that comes in, disasters are bound to happen. I think there is a great deal to be learned from that lesson. The disaster of last year would have been lesser in intensity if people had not built houses, rest houses, hostels, hotels in riverbeds. The same thing is happening, I am afraid, in Leh. Leh, earlier all construction was on high ground. Today it is no longer so. So it is a disaster which is waiting to happen. I think government investment is one side of it. The awareness is growing, no question about it. As a result of innumerable international conventions and conferences, globally there is much higher levels of awareness of conservation. But translating that into specific programs, right down to the specific areas, there is still a big gap. The central government may decide, the central government may send advisories to state governments, the state governments may have their own reasons not for doing it then and there. So the gap creeps in and then it grows bigger and bigger. But as far as awareness is concerned, as far as policy pronouncements are concerned, I think the government is very conscious and fully committed to it. Thank you.